Eye on Horror, the official podcast of iHorror.com. This is episode 62, otherwise known as season 4, episode 5. And I am your host, James J. Edwards, and with me, as always, is your other host, Jacob Davison. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing fine. This is the best part of waking up on Sundays.
Yep, we're still doing this early on Sundays, and hey, seems to work. Also with me yet again is your other host, John Correa. What's going on, Correa?
Oh, bright and early, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, still haven't moved. We got delayed again, but, it's fun having all my Blu-rays packed up. It's totally not bringing out the neuroses in me, not being able to look at all those beautiful spines and pick something at random.
Also with us today, this week, we have a special guest, and we're going to bring him on right now because we want to talk to him, and he's going to have a lot to say about what we've watched, I'm sure. You might remember him. We've had him on before. He's a two-timer, Benji Carver. Is that right? Benji Carver? Is that how you say that?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's Benji? Yeah.
Benji, like the dog, Benji the Hunted. Like the Dragon episode that everyone should watch, Dragon 67.
Benji is the curator of Warp Dimension Film Fest. That's still what it's called, right? Warp Dimension?
We are pretty much Warp Dimension TV at this point.
Okay. Yeah, that's something we'll talk about because now it's the online thing went so well. You're doing it for real, right?
Yeah, it's been, essentially we've all been stuck in some Warp Dimension for this past year. But
Ain't that the truth?
But yeah, it has now become its own weekly thing as well. So yeah.
Well, thanks for coming back. You join Kelly McNeely and Waylon Jordan as two-timers.
Woo! Oh man,
it's an exclusive club.
It is.
Yes, it is. What have you guys been doing this week? Korea and I settled a bet this week.
Yeah.
Because he watched Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows, and I watched again Gus Van Sant's Psycho. We had a deal.
Yep.
What'd you think of Book of Shadows?
It wasn't good, but it wasn't terrible.
Incredible.
For the flack it gets, it's super early 2000s. Like I know we were talking about it with Steven Kostanski, like not just the soundtrack, but like the filmmaking and stuff. It was a bit guilty of that, like psh, psh type editing stuff. That like
and that whole
the
twitchy head.
You guys couldn't see what I just did, but it was perfect. I made my head do that 13 ghosts thing.
The blur. Yeah, I was about to say very
Jacob's
like
ladder.
Yeah. But it wasn't bad. I thought it was interesting. A lot of the like kind of meta commentary they were trying to do with it. There was some interesting stuff. It was cheesy as all hell. But I did have a lot of fun with it. I watched it while I was working out, and I had so much fun with it. So like I didn't hate the movie. I had a good time, but like, man, it's nowhere. I kind of liked how it wasn't even trying to. It felt like it wasn't even trying to attempt to be scary like the first one. Like it was just like, no, we're just gonna do a bunch of really weird stuff.
It's more like a sequel to the hype of the first movie than it is a sequel to the first movie because it plays on that. It's like, because the dude is basically trying to cash in on where he lives.
I just wish it kind of dived more into the negative effects on what that kind of movie can have on a small town. Like they kind of touched upon it, but to me that was a bit more interesting. But there was fun stuff like they were with like the hidden footage and rewinding it and all that, and that was fun.
When it first came out on VHS, and I don't know how you watched it, but there was this weird thing they did. They called it Ezriver, which is reverse backwards. Yeah. And there would be hidden messages in different scenes, and you had to figure out there was a whole thing you could do where you find the hidden scenes. They would give you numbers and you put them together and crack this code. It could only be done on VHS. So I don't know if they're trying to do it on DVD, I don't know how they would do it, but they were trying to be interactive, but this was 2001 probably.
Actually, I think it was the year 2000.
Yeah, well, I mean the home release. So yeah,
right.
maybe it was 2000. Maybe they rushed it to video.
Benji, is that a future Warp Dimension episode? Putting on Blair Witch 2 on VHS and trying to decode the messages.
This could be a possibility of a secret hidden episode on our Patreon. But well, it's funny because you mentioned it because I recently purchased the double feature of Blair Witch, the original, with Curse of the Blair Witch on VHS.
Nice.
I love Curse of the Blair Witch.
Yeah, Curse of the Blair Witch is great.
It's actually in its own way, its own like hidden sequel because it's all the extra footage they didn't use, or they filmed more footage as well.
Curse of the Blair Witch is almost necessary to make the Blair Witch scary because the thing about Blair Witch, and I've always said this, it wasn't so much a movie as it was a cultural phenomenon. So you kind of needed the website and that you needed the internet.
Yeah, like there was a lot of links on the Sci-Fi Channel website.
Yeah, and you had to, you kind of needed to know the backstory or you didn't get the movie. So I love that. I mean, I know that is a bonus feature on the Blu-ray that I have of Blair Witch is all those documentaries because you kind of need them.
I have the parody on VHS. I forget what it's called.
Scooby-Doo one?
The Blair Witch Project.
No, it's
the porn one.
It's the one where it's like the guy where the cover is the guy going and with his head back and like I think it is the one where it's the guy with like boogers or something, but it's like a bunch of like fan film parodies wrapped into one. I don't know. I got it for like 50 cents at a Goodwill.
I had the Blair Thumb Project, you know, like that Steve Odekirk thumb parody movie.
That'll be showing up in a Warp Dimension with the Warp Dimension episode. That one, I hate the thumb movies, but that one has to show up.
Let's move on to Gus Van Sant's Psycho because that was my part of the deal. I've seen it before. I stand by my statement. It's a film school exercise. It's replication. He does a little other crazy things, but I mean, basically, it's replication. And unless you don't like black and white movies, or you somehow like Vince Vaughn more than Anthony Perkins or something, I still think it's kind of a pointless movie.
First of all, bro, you gonna insult Vince Vaughn, bro?
When comparing him to Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates, yeah, I'm going to insult him. I will admit that Anne Hesh is a pretty good Marion Crane, though. I did enjoy that.
And Julianne Moore is just always, great to watch. She's
Julianne
awesome.
Moore. I don't know if she should have pushed her agent harder to get her into the Poltergeist remake, or if she should have fired her agent for making her do Psycho and Carrie.
She was the best part of Carrie.
She is in two of the most pointless horror remakes. That's why I say, she should have hit the trifecta and lobbied for a part in Poltergeist.
But I mean, like, and that's the thing too. Like, I'm not saying that Gus Van Sant's Psycho is a great film, but it's interesting exactly as an exercise. It's because there's always people complaining about remakes and stuff, and I think that one is a perfect example of it's like, okay, we did the exact same thing, and without the context of the original. So if you know nothing about and never have seen the original, can you watch that film and view it as a good film? Like, is this film only bad because the original exists? So there's like the Schroeder's, effect with it, I guess. Well, I don't even know if it's Schroeder, but like,
Schrodinger. Yeah. Schrodinger cat thing. You do have a point. I think that if I had no prior knowledge of the original Psycho, I would probably have a higher opinion of Gus Van Sant's Psycho, just because it is a well-made movie, but you're comparing it to one of the most well-made movies of all time. So it is just replication. So, but you have a point. If I was, if I went into it in, what was it, 99, if I was 15 in 1999 and, had not even heard of Alfred Hitchcock and went into that, it would be a pretty good movie. It's a well-made movie. It's just kind of pointless, I think. Yeah,
because the performances in the movie are great. Like, I know Vince Vaughn is no Anthony Perkins, but he is a really solid Norman Bates. Like, in all honesty, like, if you were to think about it, it's like, maybe if they didn't do a full remake, but if they did like a reboot or another sequel or something, I think Vince Vaughn could have taken up the mantle pretty well with that,
And William H. Macy's Arbogast.
He's a great Arbogast.
He's really good.
It's an awesome cast. Like, and again, I'm not saying, we should look back on that movie and give it all this praise, but there is like some really cool and interesting like discussion that can be had by that film existing, and I think that alone is worth its existence. I
don't want to lose viewers, but I actually think Psycho is not my favorite Hitchcock movie, so in defense of that. I think I'm a big Vertigo fan, so and I feel like he made Psycho in the sense of, oh, you lost your touch with the audience. Okay, let me show you what I can do. Kind of thing.
Psycho, he definitely wanted to strip down from Vertigo with Psycho. And, he used his crew from his TV show. I mean, that tells you it all. And he purposely, this was 1969 and he shot in black and white. I mean, they were doing color for 60 years at that point. So it's not because it's an old movie that it's in black and white. That was a stylistic choice. So, I mean, it might have been a response to his critics who were saying, oh, he's too overblown. Well, take this,
Yeah.
And the marketing of that, I think, is the other thing too. I think it goes back to the Blair Witch thing. Is that whole like we will not see people after the first 10 minutes of this movie, and things like that, and him coming on.
When you leave the theater, you leave immediately.
Well, and the trailer was basically just him walking around the hotel saying, "This is the place where this happened, and this is the place." So it didn't show you, and I think that piqued curiosity. It didn't show you any of the movie. It just showed. And granted, it's Alfred Hitchcock giving the tour, so you kind of know a little bit about what you're in for. But, the marketing, he knew what he was doing.
I still say that Psycho is one of the prime examples of how you make a trailer without actually giving away anything about the movie.
Yeah.
That, the Shining trailer, and Back to the Future are the three of the best trailers of all time because they don't use a single... Shining trailer does use one single shot from the movie, but... Yeah. Because trailers give away too much, and it's like, no, you don't have to. Like, shoot something real small. I mean, that Shining trailer is literally just like, it's giving you everything you need to know. Kubrick, I'm doing a Stephen King thing. Here's a fuck ton of blood. I'll see you at the theaters, motherfuckers.
3 words: Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yeah, or Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3.
Yes, the Excalibur trailer.
Yeah. Now that was marketing.
I was so pissed off when I finally watched that movie and that scene was not in the movie. Like, I was like, wait, there is no Excalibur moment in this movie? What the fuck?
Could have put it on as a stinger at the end. They didn't even do that.
Yeah. Unfortunate.
I also saw another thing, which it's a little embarrassing that it's taken me this long to get to it because we did a promotion for it last year. I finally got around to Fantasy Island.
Oh.
Have any of you guys seen Fantasy Island?
No.
I've seen the original show a bunch.
It's I don't want to say anything bad about it because we did do a promo for it, but it's pretty bad. It is it's real disjointed. It's almost like 5 episodes of The Twilight Zone intercut with each other, and they all do kind of come together in the end. But what is weird about it is at first I thought there was this genius twist, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. This is great. And then that wasn't the genius twist. And then there was another one, and I'm like, oh, that's it. This is genius. And that wasn't it. And finally, after all these red herring twists, I was just sick and tired. And I didn't even care about all these twists anymore by the end. But I will say the absolute last thing that happens in the movie, and I don't want to spoil it, but the last thing that happens in the movie, it's the part of the movie that got the most emotional reaction out of me, which was a laugh. Like right before the credits roll, I was cracking up because it's pretty funny. But yeah, it's a little long. It's an hour and 50 minutes, which I think they could shave 20 minutes off of it and not lose a beat. But I say that about every movie. I mean, give me an 80-minute slasher, but that being said, the director's cut of Midsommar is better than the theatrical. So
Jay, you should say it's Blumhouse's
yes.
Fantasy Island.
Sorry, not Fantasy Island. Blumhouse's Fantasy Island. Yeah.
I'm actually a fan of. I'm not a fan of the movie, but I went in with a real like this is going to be garbage. And the only complaint I had is that it should have committed to an R rating. It has this weird like this should have been R feel to it, and it's totally PG-13 cut down. And it's one of my. But that last moment, not to reveal anything, did get a good laugh out of me as well.
I won't say it's worth the 2 hours before it, but when the most impact the movie has on me is basically the punchline. That kind of says more about your movie than it does about the punchline.
Also, the cast is great. Ryan Hansen from Moon, was it Maggie Q, I think, is in it, and Michael Pena. It's got a great cast, but
Michael Pena, my issue with him is he's doing Ricardo Montalban though the whole time. He's like, this is your fantasy. You must continue till the end. And I'm like, dude, give us your Marvel accent. Don't give us the Ricardo Montalban.
See, you just sold me with that. Like, I want more people to be doing Ricardo Montalban impressions like that. That should be a subgenre on its own. I mean,
Ricardo Montalban theater.
yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, if there's an entire subgenre of movies ripping off Django, why isn't there an entire subgenre of movies ripping off Ricardo Montalban? Just saying.
And speaking of VHS, I got a new movie from Vinegar Syndrome that I feel like I had to watch for therapeutic reasons. That's The Fear, which was, I think, just such a classic 90s VHS staple, because it had this creepy as hell cover with this like wooden mannequin face. And like when I was a kid, I was wandering like the VHS aisles, I'd see that and it would freak me out, because like it's like the face was looking at you. And I feel like that's kind of like why a lot of people have been rewatching it. And it's basically about this like psychological therapy group that goes out to a cabin in the woods to have and I feel like this was a plot of a lot of movies in the 90s for some reason, like a fear experiment. And there's this weird wooden mannequin in the cabin named Morty, and eventually Morty comes to life and starts killing them with their worst fears. Although it's not in like a Nightmare on Elm Street kind of way, because like he's like mute for most of the movie, just kind of tracks people with his creepy mannequin eyes. It's not, it was not nearly as scary as I imagined it was based off the VHS cover, which I feel like it's a lot of VHS horror movies. It was interesting to revisit, and it is pretty cool because Wes Craven actually has a cameo at the beginning, at the end. So that was interesting. And they got a 50-minute documentary about the making of the movie that connects to a lot of stuff. Also, I love that there was a theme song to the monster Morty by the rapper Esham, and the music video was actually made at the Aero Theater in Santa Monica. Although, like I said, it's kind of therapeutic to kind of revisit like a VHS movie that's cover scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, and rewatch it years later and think like, oh, that wasn't really scary at all.
That's usually the case. Like I went back and revisited Ghost, and I was like, I don't know why this movie terrorized me for 10 years as a child.
It's a great cover.
Korea, Benji, what have you guys been watching before we seg into our big topic? Actually, I have a feeling Benji's what he's been watching is going to seg us perfectly into our topic.
Yeah,
I was writing down notes already. Yeah.
Actually, I finally got to watch one of my most anticipated films of the year. Did you guys see The Vigil yet?
Oh, I did. That was a good one.
Oh man, I've been saying it for a while. I want more Jewish horror, because that was phenomenal. It's a story of a man who has to watch over a dead body over the night, and spooky stuff happens. Very simple setup, and it's very effective. There's some moments and some techniques where it's kind of evident that it's a first time filmmaker, but it's really solid. There's some really tense, creepy moments in it, and it really holds its own with like some pretty awesome performances too. The lead really like makes you nervous, like with his acting. Like the whole time there's just like this tension with him. Like even before spooky stuff happens, he just brings out the anxiety in me, at least. So yeah, I really dug it.
And it had some great set scares. Like I was actually watching it at home, and I jumped in my chair at a couple scenes. Like they did a really good job of building up the tension, and I totally agree that there should definitely be more Jewish horror movies, which has a history of its own. You look at stuff like Der Golem or The Keep, and it's there. It's just that there's so much more material, especially from Jewish folklore, that could be used for material for such movies.
Oh yeah, and so much like of like creature mythology comes from Yiddish folk tales and stuff.
The Dybbuk.
The Dybbuk,
There was a movie about the Dybbuk box. Was it Possession?
Yeah.
A few years back, yeah.
And then what do they keep calling? What do they call John Wick?
Baba Yaga. That's more Russian folklore than Jewish folklore.
It's more Russian, but I could have sworn I read somewhere that like there's like some Yiddish influence with it.
Maybe,
but
I don't recall exactly. But
it is very Russian, yeah.
But yeah, no, like I went to Hebrew school when I was younger, so going over stories and stuff from Jewish history and folklore. Like, there's just a wealth of material just sitting there that waiting to be adapted.
Like, come on, guys. There's enough Christian exorcist movies out there to last us a lifetime, and most of them aren't great. So let's get into the other cultures. Let's start mining those for some great, horror.
What have you been watching, Benji?
So I just wanted to say it's great to hear The Vigil. I need to see it because my good friend Brett edited The Vigil. So and he's been talking about it. But Brett Bachman's a great one of the great editors that we have right now. And I knew that he made that with Color Out of Space was the other film that he had edited.
Nice.
Oh, awesome. And
there's a third one too. He did like 3. He's like one of the hardest working guys I know right now. That's just always like he's in New Mexico right now cutting some sci-fi movie. But I just wanted to shout that out. But what I've been watching, so I had to divide it up into 2 things. That's of course what's new that I've been watching, and then which I've watched a lot, and I realized just listen to y'all, and also the VHS stuff. So I'll just do the new stuff first. So new things. I just watched Boss Level this weekend.
Oh, how was that?
It gets better, and I like. Weirdly enough, I hate message movies, but I kind of like the message that movie gives. Because we've seen that Groundhog Day story so much, and the movie itself at the beginning, I was like, okay, like. This is probably why it took a minute to get to somewhere in the theaters or to watch, but I actually really liked where it ended up. It felt like a great one of these great 80s B movies, which I think Joe Carnahan does that. Hate it or love it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And last night I watched Coming to America on Prime. And again, definitely not the original. No. It's more family friendly. But you know what? At the end of the movie, I was like, I'm happy this exists. Yeah. And it's like, like Friday After Next. I'm happy it exists.
Whoa. Friday After Next is a great Christmas movie.
Well, that's the thing. Well, that's its issue though. At the end of the day is that it feels like it's an episode in the TV series of Friday, not a movie. It's like, I'm like, I want to see more of who it almost seems like, hey, that's so-and-so, or new characters keep popping up. This one to me was like this. And I also thought it was really cool for showing like about family and about kind of the world that we live in now. The film did a great job about becoming who you are. Again, it's weird. Like, I don't like message movies, but I like the overall messages these 2 films have about like family and stuff. I don't know. It's really weird that I'm saying that. But to top it off about family and about Anne Heche, The Vanished on Netflix. Has anyone seen this movie?
I haven't seen that.
Check it out. My girlfriend and I watched it. We are obsessed with it right now. It is another B movie, 101 film starring Tom Jane, Anne Heche, and Jason Patric. Ooh. It's a Thanksgiving movie on top of that. But it is involving, and it's directed by Peter Ficelli. I don't know if you remember him. He was like the kind of the douche bro and like Can't Hardly Wait in like a lot of late 90s, early 2000 movies. Gotcha. He wrote, directed, and produced this. And it's about the simple premises is that a family played by Tom Jane and Anne Heche are in their RV with their daughter, and they go to some remote lakeside, like creepy cabin, but they're in their RV the whole time. And their daughter goes missing, and everything just goes haywire within a couple days on Thanksgiving weekend. And it is, I hope people, definitely it is a movie that just, you're like, really? There's so many plot holes going through it, but it is like a truck. The RV is just plowing through like moments that and the performance they give are so over the top. Anne Heche and Tom Jane. So you'll definitely like Tom Jane's fishing hat. I'll say that.
You had me at fishing hat.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So it's on Netflix. I'd recommend checking out on like a, with a few beers in your system kind of movie. But then VHS wise, Crack House, Cannon's Crack House from 1989. I highly, we're going to be doing that on Warp Dimension TV next month. It's part of our tribute to Cannon. Another one, it stars Richard Roundtree, Jim Brown. And it has this great intro, the VHS of it, of Richard Roundtree talking about crack cocaine and the crack epidemic. Don't smoke crack, kids. Don't believe the pipe. And then 10 to Midnight, which is Charles Bronson's closest like Dirty Harry movie that he's ever that he's done. Total Reagan ending, of how it used mental illness and murder. Meets Ted Bundy, Richard Speck kind of thing. Also an amazing performance by the guy. His name escapes me, but the killer in that, naked 85% of the time in that film.
And they filmed part of that at the Arrow Theater.
They did. Yeah, it's Butch Cassidy Sundance Kid. He goes to watch as his alibi. His alibi, which is a pretty good alibi. We played it there as kind of an anniversary thing.
10 to Midnight is one of those like one-line movies that sold me instantly. Someone just went, so yeah, Charles Bronson's in a slasher, and I went, I'm done. I'm so there.
Well, it's also like he really it's probably his most morally gray character they've ever put him in, because like Death Wish 1, it kind of is like he starts out as like, oh, he's a liberal, but he's really just an asshole to begin with. Yeah. In Death Wish 1. This one's actually like there's something that I don't want to, if people haven't seen it, that he does that it's like, oh, and then he kind of owns up to it. And you're like, and that kind of actually how the third act begins is because of what he did. It's really this great example of he's not a good guy. He's really just, as a filmmaker voice says, oh, he's a protagonist. That's all he is kind of thing. So, but then Another Day in Paradise, Larry Clark's feature after kids, starring James Woods, Melanie Griffith, Vincent Kresner, and Natasha Gresham Wagner. Has anyone seen that film?
Don't know that one.
Highly recommend it. It's probably Larry Clark's best narrative movie because he's not known for being narrative friendly. Also hopeful film, but it's totally about four junkies. Two of them take in these teen kids played by Natasha Gresham Wagner and Vincent Kresner to go on like a sort of a road trip drug deal heist. And Lou Diamond Phillips shows up in this as a transgender like criminal. That it is a fascinating film. I grew up watching it a lot. It might explain a little bit about my behavior. It's probably one of James Wood's top 5 performances for sure. Melanie Griffith, definitely, it's up there with Something Wild in her performance. But also, it is I didn't know this until I was rewatching it. It is co-written by Christopher Langdon, and I think it's his first movie he has writing credit on. So. If you haven't seen Another Day in Paradise, highly recommend on that end. And then Highway with Jared Leto and Jake Gyllenhaal, another one.
Is that a part of the Freeway series?
Well, it could be. Actually, it could be, because what it is not to take too much more time up, but it's is that it is Jake Gyllenhaal and Jared Leto are these two Las Vegas outskirts, living in the trailer, like outskirts slackers who have to go on the road, and they go up to Seattle. And it takes place when Kurt Cobain died. Also, it's a period piece. But we'll see about how it's one that has the rights are really weird on it.
When was it made?
Early 2000s.
Okay. I thought all these VHS things were from the 80s. I'm like, but Kurt Cobain died in 94. But okay.
Well, it was made in the early 2000s, but yeah, it is a period piece. Takes place in 94 in Vegas to Seattle.
Said about 10 years before.
And Candyman: Farewell to the Flesh. I can't wait for the new Candyman film. Korea, I think you and I talked a little bit about that. I think in our conversation.
Yeah, I still stand because Farewell to the Flesh. Farewell to the Flesh was a recent watch for me too. I got the Scream Factory Blue, and there was a lot about that movie that I liked more than the original. I thought the mythology, just even having Candyman take place in New Orleans, just fits better, than it does in Chicago. But yeah, I loved Farewell to the Flesh, and it was also very interesting because I'm a huge fan of the OC. So getting to see. The mom, and I love seeing characters or actors from the OC pop up in 90s horror films. It's fantastic.
She is no Virginia Madsen, but the radio DJ really gets me in my head. That's where I've always envisioned a character or wanting to be that character with that Wolfman Jack voice kind of thing. That whole movie. But I wanted to segue into, as I watched Out of Bounds on Draft House VOD, a watch party of that. right before, they announced their big Chapter 11. Have you seen Out of Bounds at all? It's Anthony Michael Hall and who's also in it? The girl from Near Dark. I'm blanking on her right now, but she's like a great 80s like actress. But imagine this movie as it's Breakfast Club meets Beverly Hills Cop. Jenny Wright. Jenny Wright, that's her name. Also, great performance in Young Guns 2 that she gives. So that movie was interesting because I did a watch party finally with the VOD with Draft House, and I was like, "Oh, this is great!" Vidiots was sponsoring the event, and then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 days later, they made that announcement. I was like, "Wait, what's going on?" I was kind of like, as we've all been in that limbo with Alamo Draft House and what's been happening there, but also with streaming services and what we're kind of doing now is we are going back to the theater and whatnot. So, but anyways, it kind of was like a great hybrid of like VHS, Alamo, streaming kind of thing. So
yeah. Oh, and while we're talking about it, I want to add that I did join the Hitcher VHS screening you guys did last week.
Same.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And although I also wanted to point out that I was really glad that you guys played Gunman's Blues, which was the movie that the writer Eric Red made as like kind of a short movie before he made The Hitcher, which I never even seen or heard before, but really hooked me. Like, it was really well made, and just the whole show before the actual Hitcher was great. And just every time I watch The Hitcher, I just think like this is one of Rutger Hauer's greatest performances. Like it really is.
Everyone's on point in that movie. I think it's even C. Thomas Howell as his performances, if anything, is probably more real because he's really frightened of Rutger Hauer.
Oh yeah,
most of the time.
It's hard not to be.
But it also revealed, like C. Thomas Howell's like career as he kind of did this whole like, 80s, teen heartthrob, and then all of a sudden became like this like weird B movie 90s action star. Like just him and Eric Roberts are even intersect in some of these movies too. Like they're on that end. So. And
it all culminates in Hitcher 2.
Oh yeah, with Jake Busey.
Yep.
Has anyone seen this? I have not seen it. I don't know. I'm scared.
I saw it like a long time ago on the Sci-Fi Channel.
I just got it because of your screening the other day. I ended up buying that and the Hitcher remake digitally. And also, you got me to finally watch my copy of Flesh and Blood, which, holy crap, I was not I know it was a Paul Verhoeven movie, but I was not expecting that film to be so nihilistic and just not angry, but it was just like, you could tell that was Paul Verhoeven going, people are romanticizing the medieval times way too much. I'm going to show how much that time period sucked. And those plague scenes hit so different in 2021.
It's Game of Thrones 1985. I mean, that's the movie. So.
Let's move on to our topic, which this is a good segue to it, because what we want to talk about this week, and Benji's the perfect guy to talk about this with, is kind of the VHS culture and how, especially in the horror genre, it's more than just nostalgia. I think that's a huge part of it, but there's also an aesthetic to it where I guess the question is, why do horror fans embrace VHS culture more than, say, guys who like comedies or dramas? I think it is nostalgia, but I also think it's accessibility, available. There's a lot of movies that people remember fondly from their youth that you can't get any other way. So you end up having to track it down on VHS.
Yeah. Do you want me to start off, or
sure?
You guys,
yeah.
Go for it. Thoughts on that?
It's just a jumping off point, and
okay. Yeah. So I think the thing is that there was an art form that is lost. I know Vinegar Syndrome and Severin and Scream Factory or Shout Factory have definitely brought back the posters or the kind of these images, but that I think is definitely it's like a trading card system on that. But also, I don't want to speak to that because there are some great documentaries like Rewind This that talk about that, and there are people that have been in the VHS community long before I've been. This has been sort of been my project for the last 2 years, kind of thing. But I think that there is this sort of this lost art, or it's a very like Indiana Jones uncovering of like, oh, that this, and then this movie is like not even on eBay, so like how much is it? It could be like hundreds of dollars and stuff like that, or thousands of dollars. I mean, I know that Disney tapes are going for insane amounts.
But eBay. Are they though? I know people are listing them, but are people actually buying them for those? I don't think so.
I don't know.
The whole black diamond on the spine thing is absolute bullshit. I mean, and the only time I really feel like old copies of Disney movies actually go for big prices is when stuff gets vaulted, but it always comes out of the vault like 5 or 10 years later. But sometimes they do edit stuff out. So like I know they're putting out Fantasia again, but they're probably gonna cut out some of the not good at all racist caricatures in it. So like older
don't even
Blu-rays.
Get us started on Song of the South.
That's never
rewind back. Let's rewind back then. Yeah, let's just get out. Let's get literally as a VHS tape. We can fast forward and rewind in this conversation. But yeah, I think that is definitely there. I think also there's just I think someone touched upon maybe here when we were doing some of these questions is that there are movies that still don't exist in any other format because of rights issues. I mean, The Hitcher, for example, actually doesn't. Someone was claiming in the show that there's a German Blu-ray.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's the same. But I think the quality is not there still. Like there's no digital remaster.
I'll come back with feedback on that because I did buy that on eBay. I chimed in because I remember Diabolic DVD had it, but it sold out so quick because it's so hard to get a copy of The Hitcher. It was on HBO Max for a minute, but
I've got an old DVD of The Hitcher. I mean, and it looks like an old DVD. I mean, it's nothing special. It's not like a remaster. It's budget, but it has been available on DVD. I think I got it in a 2-pack with, I don't know, it might have even been The Night Flyer, another one that's hard to find.
I have that on VHS.
And those transfers are literally just off a VHS rip. Like they're not even on negatives or anything like that. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that there's that there. I mean, in the horror community, I think, especially for this podcast, there could be other answers there too, but I feel like it is like this sort of like, hey, there's this nature of, oh, I have something, there's something hidden about it. But then on top of that, I think is the video store. That was our
absolutely
example. Because I worked for a Hollywood Video. There are movies that I remember working for that I found there that they had transitioned out of VHS around the time I started working for them. But there were movies that definitely had very limited runs on DVD, and there's VHSs that are out there that are maybe a little more accessible as well too. Kind of thing.
Well, you used to go, I mean, and this, I'm probably dating myself by now, but like in the 80s, I would go to Warehouse, in the back of the Warehouse record store, there was a video section, and you go back there and you chose the movie you were going to watch that night by the cover.
Yeah.
And that's something that kind of went away with even Blockbuster and Hollywood Video, because they would just have, just like the plain white box. When you would rent something from Warehouse, you would actually take like the clamshell. And this is also when, the rental copies probably cost $200. So if you lost it, they would charge your card for the $200. But looking through the horror section was especially fun because you would see ones like I believe The Gates of Hell was one of them. It says banned in 50 countries. And you're like, I'm renting that. You know?
Faces of Death.
Yeah. Pieces was another one. It's like, oh, so scary, you'll poop yourself. Or, it didn't actually say that, but it was something similar. And you're like, oh yeah, okay, challenge accepted. I'm renting Pieces, So part of it, I think you're right. It's going to a video store and looking at the covers, and it's not the same as just, clicking through like Netflix or Amazon Prime or Shudder even, where you see like, especially because art these days, I mean, how we were joking a few episodes ago, I think with Steve Kostansky, how many times have we seen that same girl crawling away from, reaching toward the camera on cover art isn't what it used to be either, but that's how you used to choose your movie.
Yeah, that's it's like what I was talking about before with The Fear. Like, The Fear wasn't really a great movie, but it had a great VHS cover, which is what like so many people are bonding about when that got the Blu-ray release. And you know, because it's a shared experience, you know, like we wander around the video store and it's like it left it up to the imagination, you know, like you see all these different VHS covers and like monsters and stuff, especially in the horror aisle. Like the horror VHS covers were much more visceral and really hooked you, you know. It's why there's so many great classic horror video posters, especially from that time period. And you know, I actually got that book, the VHS video cover art by Thomas Hodge, the Dude Designs, and yeah, that's a thing. There was a real art form to it back then.
Well, there had to be, because I think there was more at stake back in the 80s. I mean, you had to have a good cover because that's how people were picking it. Now, as they're flipping through, you know, Netflix, the cover doesn't have to stand out as much. I mean, which we've been discussing. I think that now there's other ways that people, you know, it's more like buzz about a title than it is just going strictly by what the cover looks like.
Well, and also just for historical context, we have to remember that VHS was like the first, like, and with video rental stores, it made home viewing accessible, you know, because before then you could only really see movies in theaters, and that's if it was playing in your area, you know. And then on top of that, it would be television viewings where it would also be edited for time and commercials and stuff. So when VHS came out, more people were able to watch movies at home, and it was a huge market. So yeah, they had to stand out because a lot of these movies weren't getting theatrical. They were made for video. So they had to, you know, catch the eye. And I think nostalgia does play a big part of it, because how many of us remember poking the Bleeders cover to move the blood around?
Yeah, I did that.
Or playing with the Jack Frost and Jack Frost 2 covers to make his mouth open and close, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, which is why I love Vinegar Syndrome, because they and you know, those other labels that Benji was bringing up, that they kind of brought that back in a way, because particularly Vinegar Syndrome, like they actually, you know, brought the lithographic 3D cover for their Jack Frost release, and also Demon Wind, which is another favorite of mine. So
Demon Wind, this is such a great cover.
Oh my god, yeah, with just the demon bursting through the window. I love that. And which is a thing, you know, it made it fun. It made it made even, you know, just the cover art entertaining. Like it had a real hook.
To Korea's point, you're right. Where back when home viewing was a brand new thing, that is the only way you could watch it. Especially things like I remember when we first got our first VHS VCR, and I was probably 13, maybe 12. But the guy at the store gave my dad a free rental, and he came home with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I had heard of this movie, of course, you know, from all my friends talking about it, but I had never seen it because you know, this was a good 10 years after the movie was made. It had long been out of theaters. They're never going to show Texas Chainsaw Massacre on TV, at least not back then. So I'm like, I'm going to get to see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is awesome. And it was, I'm at home watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely in the forbidden zone of VHS. I remember sneaking that by my dad one summer. And then actually shockingly being like, wait, this isn't the part 2 that I thought it was going to be, like the super gory version.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not, by today's standards, it's a pretty tame movie. I mean, it's got its moments, you know, the sledgehammer into the head, you know, and the sawing of the guy in the wheelchair. But for the most part, it's a pretty tame movie.
It's just a dirty and filthy movie.
Yeah, and the fact that I had heard so much about it, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get to see it. You know,
what I find, because like James brought it up earlier, it's just one of those things where it's like horror, cult, you know, exploitation, and a bit of sci-fi fans. We're kind of the only people keeping VHS alive, because outside of us, I think the only people that really still own VHS tapes are like grandparents who never moved on with the formats, you know, or people who just want stuff super cheap. It's a very niche thing, and it just is a testament to how dedicated horror, you know, genre fans are, and that we keep this dead format alive. That's like 3 or 4 generations back. And then there's, you know, because I know there's some things where it's like, oh, there is a Blu-ray of it, but they edited the scene out and it's only on VHS. There's a lot of that with Laserdisc collectors. We're not going to get into Laserdisc, but especially the Criterion Laserdisc, there's special features or commentaries on it that were never seen on any other format again. So there's always little things like that, but VHS didn't have those special features for the most part.
Well, the commentaries, you would have to take a plug out and plug it into a different jack. And that's if you had a VCR that had 4 channels of audio in the back. I mean, there were some movies that had director's commentaries, but you had to like take your system apart to listen to.
Wait, what? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, you had to, it would send it through a different audio channel, and you would have to take cables out, and you had to have a VCR that would read it.
I know the other day I found a VHS that was basically just like the bonus features disc, and it was a VHS for MC Hammer's song to the Addams Family, and it came with like the music video and a making of doc and like I think maybe an alternative like music video. It was like the MC Hammer music video and then like the Addams Family music video for the song.
Trying to be Thriller.
I just know it was the best $3 I've spent recently.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like when I would rent out a bunch of movies, or there were certain movies that would have their special features after the movie on VHS. You had to play it linearly, but watch the movie and like stay tuned because for special features after the credits. Like I'm trying to think, or like when I was young, like I'd rent the Star Wars movies, and the VHSs would have like kind of making of practical effects stuff after the movie, or also like a lot of specific horror labels would do special features like Full Moon Features. They had those making of effects after like all the Puppet Master movies or that sort of thing.
Now, Korea, you brought up a good point where horror fans are keeping this outdated format alive. And what's especially funny about it is it's not even like you can say with vinyl records, they sound better than CDs, but VHS, no one's going to go say in a VHS looks better than even a DVD, much less a Blu-ray or a 4K. So it's totally accessibility in that, or the weird special features. I think we're all collectors. What's the most any of you guys have paid for a VHS tape?
Oh man, I honestly haven't bought a VHS recently, but I did buy a VHS copy of Michael Mann's The Keep. Especially because this was back when there wasn't even that Australian DVD, and it was because again, it's about accessibility and it's a hard movie to find. I don't know. I think I paid like maybe $10 or $20 for it.
I paid. And this is in the mid 90s before DVD. I mean, DVD was a thing, but not as much of a thing. I paid $30 for a VHS copy of Last House on the Left. And I also paid $25 for a VHS copy of Savage Streets.
Oh, worth every penny.
Savage Streets was. Last House on the Left, it was like 3 years later, they came out with a DVD for like $10. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But these are movies I really wanted to own. Or in the case of Last House on the Left, I really wanted to see it. I had never seen it. Savage Streets, I had recorded off HBO years before and wore that tape down, so I had to own it.
Well, I think that's interesting because the two that I've recently bought were Switchblade Sisters, the Rolling Thunder Pictures one.
Nice.
That has all this Tarantino stuff on top of it, and then Dance with the Devil, which is Perdita Durango. Because that version, there's a DVD of it as well, but it is the most complete, but yet not complete. Like there's a couple moments it's still missing from that. And I know Severn is just about to release their Blu-ray.
I just got their 4Ks of his movies. I haven't watched them yet, but I'm excited.
Oh, you're in for a ride. You are in for a ride. You'll definitely need to take a shower afterwards.
Oh, I can't wait and watch it in all the clarity of that restoration.
But that's interesting. I wish I had my Spanish poster of Savage Streets behind me here today because I that is my proud frame up, I call it.
At one point, I saw a guy on Twitter ask, "What movie do you think you've watched more than anybody else in the world?" And my answer is I would not be surprised to learn that I've watched Savage Streets more than anybody else in the world, except for maybe the filmmaker, because, clearly they have to watch it more when they're making it. But there was a point when I would watch that maybe twice a day. I would just have it on. Nothing else would be on TV. I'd put Savage Streets on and, go about, playing guitar or, doing homework or whatever, and Savage Streets is just hanging out.
Well, something I think you touched on, Jay, I think that's great, is you said you had it like off of HBO rip. The early days of ripping stuff was when you got that free weekend on HBO and you got that. My grandma would actually do that for me. Like, she always had cable and she got those free weekends. And so Kingpin is probably the most watched movie I've ever seen because of that and Biodome. But Biodome ran out of tape, so the last 10 minutes is always missing. So for a long time. But I think that's something that's also there that's a nostalgic thing, even for myself. You've seen the show now with what I'm doing there is it's kind of giving you that feeling of when you pop in that tape, there's these trailers, there's these extra features that are on there that's almost like you're channel shifting, or it's like you don't have that with other media where you can have someone tape over something, become someone's wedding video or not someone's wedding video. Like we played around with that a lot with our From Dusk Till Dawn episode where it was like, oh, it's like a stag night, like a bachelor party video that just keeps cutting in and out like a found footage movie. Like we had like bikers and then we had strippers and then we had like how to strip, a how-to strip video, kind of like that. So.
And you did a great job of curating. I know Jacob already brought up the short film and I brought up the trailer for Flesh and Blood, but you also got me to drop almost $30 on a Blu-ray of Cohen and Tate, which I'd never heard of before watching that trailer the other night. And I was just like, what the fuck is this movie? And I was not going to pay $30 for a Scream Factor. So I got the Arrow video release, but.
Well, if, not to self-promote, the Patreon, we made a special alternative version with Cohen and Tate and Duel off a Swedish TV rip that we found. And because I felt like in this alternative universe of The Hitcher that these two movies would exist kind of thing.
We're running out of time. So let's actually talk about what you're, we don't want to let you out of here before we plug what you're doing because it fits into our theme here. What is Warp Dimension TV? Let's talk about that for a few.
Warp Dimension TV is let me look up what I put on at Funny Enough on the Patreon, what I said, like what is it? I mainly have said it is VHS flashbacks, TV takeovers, secret cinema, mostly live, is probably the most accumulated of it, because we're trying to also do not just the VHS Wednesdays, but like there are movies that maybe on DVD that are only available to rip and talk about. But with the VHS, mostly of the side of these episodes, it's just to really give a sense of scheduled community. There's some great stuff that is coming out there because of the last year of streamers being able to show you their mixtapes, essentially, or what is curated instead of just going through the streaming platforms of like, well, what's good tonight? It's more like, hey, we found something that we can build an episode around. And so, and for example, the Hitcher episode that Korea and Jacob saw, it's like, what can we build around it? So we have like footage of car crashes. We have, things like, trailers and then to entice people to, hey, this exists. There's so much great Jennifer Jason Leigh movies that were in the 80s that I didn't even know about, like Last Exit to Brooklyn. I know the book more than the movie. Heart of Midnight. I don't even know this movie. It looks like a David Lynch knockoff. But just things like that we just built around it. But then where it came from was this Warp Dimension Fest, which I was on, and that we're doing. We pushed it to May 7th to the 9th. It's a 3-day festival of new material or movies that we could be finding. We don't have a date. We're not like when he's like, we need to find just new stuff. It's just like hidden things. It could be your old family wedding video that turns into a total horror movie. So over. And we have some interesting stuff coming along. I think what we're finding ourselves though with that festival is we'll have a good solid 3 days, but we were a lot longer because I think there was so much material people were trying to get out and they were stuck inside kind of thing with festivals, and people haven't been able to make as much in the last year. So that's what we kind of shifted into Warp Dimension TV, is have a weekly show, bring this VHS aspect as well to it. And then give you trauma. Like when I saw, and Jacob, that's a great example of the fear. When I was a kid, BJ Video that was essentially my library as a little kid that gave me also my biggest fears and weirdest moments of like this poster that I think might have been like a Witchcraft 6. Do you guys remember Witchcraft?
Oh yeah.
Or like there's like a dude, it was like 3 or 4 years old is my memory, and this guy's getting like boiled over a pot and he's got like a skull on where his face should be is like a skull. That's always just burned into my memory. Or Blackout, where there's a guy in a gimp outfit and he's got a zipper over him, where I'm just like,
oh, Blackout's dope. I watched that one recently.
Yeah. So I think the cover is more known than the actual movie. And so, yeah, BJ Video being sort of like this beginning of this weird inception of it.
Well, thanks again, Benji. Always a pleasure here. We need to have you back. We need to have you be a three-peat. We joked about last time you were on. We kept talking for like an hour and a half after you were gone. We could have gotten 2 episodes out of you. I have a feeling this is going to be more of the same. But where can we find Warp Dimension TV?
So 2 places you can find it. Always at anotherholeinthehead.com or ahith.com, which is sort of the inception of it. It's George Casalian Jr.'s work. And we helped create that. He helped create the Warp Dimension with me together. And then every Wednesday night via Zoom right now, we call it the Zoom Underground. You can go to my Instagram or my Twitter, and it'll be that link for the March. We call March VHS Madness right now in the link. So we have upcoming is Roadhouse.
Yes.
I think this episode might come out after Roadhouse, but then Dance of the Devil is actually going to be after that. Then Angel Heart, and then Existence will be our we're capping it between Jennifer Jason Lee March kind of thing on that. But then also our Patreon, which is at Warp Dimension TV. It's really the best deal. I always ask for donations during our live show, but for, starting at 707, you get curated, like it's almost like your own mixtapes or those tapes that, like my grandma gave me when I was a kid. I promise to give you the last 10 minutes of Biodome on that. But I think that's
not the first 80 minutes, just the last 10 minutes of Biodome. That's it.
I love Biodome. It is a special film. Mainly because of Taylor Negron. I think Taylor Negron is the hidden key to that film. But I think if you missed the live show, you can definitely get the mixtapes and all that and special things as well. But it is it's not like Netflix. It's not like, oh, hey, it's a streaming. It's more of like, and you get like, I've been always finding these like crazy, like, international posters, like the Krakau's German poster is insane that we just found, a Japanese Hitcher poster. So things like that just to highlight. But you'll get movie reviews by me as well. There's this long review I did of the Hitcher and my reflection of 20 years of it recently. So it is more just than just like it's just a next Netflix subscription kind of thing. So
could you remind people of what your Twitter and Instagrams are, so if they want to find you?
So at Twitter it's at Movie Hopping, and at Instagram it's at Movie Hopping Benji.
So now they don't have to dig back to find the last episode you were on to get that stuff.
And I gotta say also, with this Warp TV, when you say that you curate and do stuff before, it's not just showing 1 or 2 trailers before it. That was a solid hour block of shorts and commercials and trailers. Like you get your money's worth out of this. Yeah. And then you had like an awesome discussion with Laser Craig after the movie, and then another one right after. So like your night is like scheduled. When you join that.
I hope people check out the live show. The live show is where it's really special. And we try to keep that free right now for folks, especially. But now everyone's going outside, it seems to be soon. So I really felt like that has always been what has gotten me through this last year, is me and Laser Craig. And George in the beginning. George is great. He's always the man behind the curtain. But he just like moves around all the time. So his signal is like the worst. But I do like to say, I would like to say thank you to George Casalian Jr. and to my grandma Lou. She's not with us anymore, but she was definitely, I think, the person talking to you that really inspired me to create something like this for you all. So on that end.
Thanks again, Benji, for joining us. We'll have you back. I'm sure that we're not done with you. Our theme song is from Restless Spirit, so go check them out. And our artwork is by Chris Fisher, so go check him out. You can find us at the Eye on Horror Facebook page, Eye on Horror Twitter, the Eye on Horror Instagram, the iHorror Facebook, iHorror.com. What else we got, Korea?
I think you got it.
You're the social media guru.
Oh, I also make lists on Letterboxd of all the movies that are discussed per episode, whether it's a quick mention or a big digest. So if you haven't been listening to the episodes and you look at it, it looks weird because it's, we'll have like Hereditary right next to Magic Mike XXL, and it's like, how the fuck did they make that connection?
We were probably talking about Sweat.
In 4DX. Want it.
Cool. All right. So, Benji, thanks again. We will see you guys in a couple of weeks. So for me, James J. Edwards.
I'm Jacob Davison.
I'm Jonathan Correa.
And I'm Benji Carver.
Keep your eye on horror.
Wait, James, don't play the end music yet. All right, guys, I've been trying to do this a bit secretly with the after music, but I accidentally bought a bootleg of the Anchor Bay release for Dawn of the Dead. I don't want this. I actually got a legit release shortly after, so I'm giving it away for free. If you want a free bootleg copy of Anchor Bay's release of Dawn of the Dead, it's a good rip. I just don't want it. Message us on social media, any social media platform. I'll see the message and I'll ship it to you for free. I'll fucking sign it. I want to get rid of this thing. I've been leaving secret messages in these episodes for over a month now and no one has claimed it. Please get this. All right, cue the music.